2025. Clerk will call the roll, please.
Tauschek.
Here.
Herman.
Here.
Matzdorf. Here. Gilson.
Here.
Hildebrand.
Here.
Penquitz.
Here.
Binder.
Here.
Sandy.
Here.
Let the record show we have them. A quorum. Next is the approval of the minutes from July 29th, 2025. Chair will entertain a motion.
I'll move approval of the minutes.
I'll second the motion.
We have a first and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you very much. Moving on to item 3, revision of city ordinance, sex offender restrictions. I'll ask City Administrator Tim Blakely to make an opening comment, and then we'll open it up to maybe Attorney Fever.
Yeah, so I'm going to make some very introductory comments. I'm going to turn it over to Chief Ruggles, who's going to run down the proposal. I just did want to highlight that I did ask Attorney Fever to attend our committee the whole meeting. There's a series of state statutes regarding sex offender ordinances, so we have to make sure that we are in compliance with those. However, we do decide to update the ordinance. I did also want to highlight in your packet is a series of studies. So we encourage you prior to making a decision on the sex offender ordinance to review those studies related to recidivism. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chief Ruggles and then have some discussion, and we'll bring this ordinance back to you in the next month or so.
Thank you, Tim. Good evening. So this discussion started for staff many months ago, around the beginning of the year. It had been brought to my attention that our city ordinance was behind the times compared to the other municipalities here in Sheboygan County and many others around the state, and that many of them had enacted further restrictions beyond what we had done. And so this started the conversation through Tim to the city attorney to get advice as to how to proceed. We were cautioned right away that there are open challenges and such things, that should we make these restrictions too severe, that it would be looked at as a form of punishment rather than regulation, and so we have to be very careful what we do for people who have already served the time allotted to them by the courts as punishment and now are trying to reacclimate into society. We have to be careful how we proceed. If we go too restrictive, then obviously we open the city up to challenges from those people, potentially drawing us into litigation. So on the other hand of this, obviously we want to have some safety and some assurance that we're not looking at a situation where we invite reoccurrence or reoffending. So in that spirit, I guess, is the best way to say, we started looking at what we can do. Many municipalities have enacted restricted zones where they cannot establish, an offender cannot establish residency within so many feet of protected locations such as a school, a park, a playground, city pools, libraries, etc. There's a fairly long list. We began to look at what different municipalities had: 1,000 foot, 2,000 foot, 1,500 feet, 3,000 feet. When we looked at this, the 1,000-foot radius of just our schools in Plymouth actually prohibits a large area of the city from being used for residency by an offender. Once we start getting beyond 50, 60+%, and I don't have the exact percentage of homes that fall into that zone, but the 1,000-foot radius pretty much put us in a very clear area where we were limiting a substantial amount of available housing as not being available to offenders. Right there, that's a cautionary thing for us. We have to be careful how much further we restrict them. So we recommend at this point in time in the ordinance that we go with 1,000 foot surrounding all schools. If we include parks or other recreational facilities, again, we start to limit large sections as our parks are very well spread out in this community. And we start to get into the area where we're restricting 80-90% plus of homes. And that, we've been cautioned, is probably going to open us up to some type of litigation where these people will not be able to find a place to live in our community. Moving on from there, though, we currently, under city ordinance, we do have safety zones around all of those described areas where children or other people that could potentially be victims, where they tend to congregate. And so beyond schools, we also have a safety zone, which right now includes the actual real property of those facilities of parks, playgrounds, pools, etc., where a offender who's required to register cannot be present in those locations without a reason in And those reasons were stipulated under ordinance, that it can't just be loitering, it can't just be hanging out, it can't be those kind of things. You have to have a purpose to be in those places that fits under the current ordinance. We felt our current ordinance was very good in that regards. It stipulates what conditions they can be there and when they can't. That we felt was sufficient. We also then had a 200-foot safety zone beyond that. So for an example, if you just had the safety zone, the real property of, let's say, a park, in theory, a registered offender could stand on the sidewalk or the public street outside that location. The 200 feet adds that safety burden of keeping them off the public way immediately adjacent to those areas, unless they have a lawful purpose in being there. So again, if they just drive by or something, that's not what we're trying to prevent. But if they're just standing on a street or on a sidewalk adjacent to a playground for no other purpose, then yes, we do still have these restricted 200-foot radius beyond the actual real property of all those previously mentioned facilities. We kept all that in the new version of the ordinance. We kept the current holiday provisions that say that a registered offender may not engage in Halloween, handing out candy to minors, may not dress up as Santa Claus or the Easter Bunny or something like that in costume and try to conceal themselves or interact with children. We kept those provisions as well. Beyond that, we also looked at a potential here to restrict new offenders from moving into our community unless, under state statute, there are specific guidance for such as a violent sexual offender. They either have to be where they have resided in this county previously, before they were required to register. They have to have been convicted in this county, or the last condition would be they would be seeking some form of treatment in this area, in this county. And under those regulations, the state is pretty adamant that that's when they can be placed in our community, if they are a violent sexual offender. We decided to enact a similar thing, that we said our registered offenders would not be able to reside here unless they were previous residents of the Sheboygan County area before they committed the offense, which requires them to register. We are the county of conviction, or otherwise are seeking treatment in Plymouth. They further restrict the placement of sexually violent persons by requiring them, under state statute, chapter 980, to be placed within the home county and prohibiting them from residing within 1,500 feet of specific locations. That's if they're subject to a commitment order under state statute for a sexually violent offense. We then, under the guidance of the attorney, it is highly recommended that we have an appeal process for individuals to bring forth a request that doesn't fit with ordinance, or to bring forth situations that might not be covered by the ordinance, for an appeal process decided by a board of review, and therefore not have it just where it's a blanket no, but we give them some due cause, listen to their argument, and we move on from there with a reasonable vote of appointed officials to make that determination. So it is our recommendation. Those are the essential elements that have changed under the new proposal in front of you. Again, we tried to keep the basics of the current ordinance, improve it to where we do have now a residential safety zone around schools. It will incorporate a lot of the parks and facilities. Again, the library would currently fall within that zone automatically because it's close enough to SJL that it would fall within 1,000 feet. Again, our facilities are very well spread out throughout the